I try to avoid that, but I think it's unavoidable.
You know, I can't do this forever. I've been doing it since I was 21. As you move into your 80s, you say, hey, that's enough.
Robert Redford was one of the greatest names in modern Hollywood. The 89-year-old actor died early this morning at his home in Utah. That's according to his publicist. Redford made his name as an actor starting in the 1960s.
Amy Redford's confession has stunned the world. Her father, the legendary Robert Redford.
Robert Redford passed away today.
The actor Robert Redford has died.
Beloved actor Robert Redford has died at the age of 89.
Spent his final days in heartbreaking silence. Was it a secret illness, a broken promise, or a burden carried too long? Friends are in tears, Hollywood insiders whisper of regrets, and fans feel the weight of his fading legacy. What hidden truth could be so powerful that it reshapes the memory of a man once larger than life? The revelation is darker, sadder, and more haunting than anyone imagined. Amy Redford's revelation, the hidden burden behind a legend. Amy Redford speaks now in a voice heavy with both grief and resolve about her father Robert Redford, who passed away at the age of 89, and the truth he carried in his heart for decades. She says the world never saw the weight he bore. While his career glowed with fame, awards, and grandeur, there was a part of his past, a private ache, that shaped the way he lived, acted, and loved. For years, fans and even his close friends had no inkling of this emotional burden he refused to share. Robert Redford was born on August 18, 1936, in Santa Monica, California, in a modest home, far from Hollywood's red carpet lights. His early life was simple: working-class rhythms, small joys, traditional values in the air. Yet beneath that ordinary exterior, Amy describes a young man at war with himself, stirred by art, passion, but sorrow too. The challenge of fitting in, of meeting expectations, and a growing struggle with alcohol all shadowed his university years. In the 1950s, he enrolled at the University of Colorado. It seemed a natural step toward promise, toward fulfilling hopes, but those years brought hardship, academic pressure, nights of struggle, the pull of something darker. His battle with alcohol grew in silence, and his promise slipped. Eventually, he dropped out. As Amy puts it, that moment could have defined him, broken him, but instead it became a hinge, a painful turning point. Seeking escape, seeking clarity, Redford left America for Europe in the late 1950s. Not to become famous, at least not yet, but to paint, to follow the fragile light of creativity. In Europe, in the art and culture around him, he found a different kind of truth. He painted not for public acclaim, but to understand himself. Though he never pursued painting as his profession, Amy says, those years abroad shaped him profoundly. Painting pulled something from his soul, sensitivity, a depth many later saw in his films and his direction, but few understood where it came from. Amy now reveals that these early trials, the academic failure, the secret of drinking, the longing for a life beyond acting, stayed with him, molding choices in every role he played, every relationship he held. She speaks of a father who laughed in front of cameras, but at home sometimes carried a quiet sorrow or a restless longing or guilt he could not name. She believes he faced shame, the kind that locks you in silence, even as he appeared open, generous, powerful on screen and stage. Above all, Amy's words paint a more human Redford than myth or legend. A man who strove, who faltered, who carried regret and art, love and pain side by side. And now, at 89, he is gone, and many questions remain. How did this secret shape his final years? What burdens did he keep even when the world admired him most? As Amy's confession unfolds, a more complete, hauntingly beautiful portrait emerges. One that promises to reveal much more than anyone ever expected before. But how has Amy Redford's confession reshaped our understanding of Robert Redford's final days, and what haunting secrets remain? Stay tuned. Amy Redford's painful truth about her father's final days. When Amy Redford began to speak about her father's last chapter, her words carried both sorrow and clarity. She described how the world adored Robert Redford for his artistry, charm, and strength. Yet few knew how much pain he carried within his family life, especially as he grew older. In his final days, Amy revealed, those memories returned to him with an intensity that left him fragile, reflective, and haunted by the weight of love and loss. His life had been marked by heartbreaks that no fame could erase. In 1958, he married Lola Van Wagenen, a union that seemed built on hope and youthful devotion. But soon after, tragedy struck with a force that shattered them both. Their first son, Scott, died as an infant from illness. Redford later admitted this was one of the darkest moments of his entire life, a wound that never truly healed. Even decades later, Amy explained, her father would speak of Scott with a quiet sadness, as though the child he lost had never left his thoughts. Despite this crushing grief, Robert and Lola continued to build their family, welcoming Shauna, Jaime, and Amy. But once again, hardship shadowed them. Their second son, Jaime, was born prematurely and nearly died from hyaline membrane disease, a severe condition that made every breath a struggle. Against the odds, Jaime survived, but Redford carried the scars of those early days, knowing how fragile life could be. As Amy revealed, her father's anguish as a parent only deepened when Jaime's health problems worsened. In his teenage years, Jaime was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, a painful and chronic illness that eventually led to cirrhosis of the liver. At just 31, he underwent a liver transplant. For Robert, then in the middle of his celebrated directing career, the ordeal was unbearable. Even while filming Quiz Show in New York, he flew back and forth to Omaha every weekend just to sit by his son's hospital bed. Amy recalled how her father's eyes would grow heavy with exhaustion, but he refused to miss a moment of Jaime's fight for life. Jaime recovered and went on to build a meaningful career as both a filmmaker and an environmental advocate, something Robert spoke of with quiet pride. But the years of illness, fear, and watching his child suffer left an imprint on him that never faded. Amy said that in his final days, Robert would often sit in silence, reflecting on the price of fatherhood, the joy of seeing his children grow, but also the torment of their pain. His marriage to Lola had also carried its share of sorrow. They began with only $300 between them, determined to make a life together. But the tragedies of losing Scott, the struggles of Jaime's illness, and the endless demands of Hollywood tested them. As Robert's fame soared with films like The Natural and Out of Africa, he was often away for months, leaving Lola to shoulder the burden at home. In 1985, after 28 years of marriage, they separated. He later described the divorce as mutual yet filled with regret. Amy's confession reveals that in those final days, her father carried these memories like shadows. The pain of loss, the strain of distance, and the sorrow of choices made long ago stayed with him. And while the world saw a legend, she saw a man shaped by grief, resilience, and an unshakable devotion to his family, one whose private struggles never left his heart. How did Robert Redford's final days conceal such haunting truths? And what hidden weight did Amy's confession finally bring into light? Keep watching. The final shadows over her father's life. When Amy Redford speaks about her father's last days, her words carry the weight of generations of sorrow. She reveals that Robert Redford's life, often celebrated as a golden tale of Hollywood triumph, was in truth a story marked by devastating loss and unhealed wounds. To the public, he was the iconic star of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. the man who seemed to have everything. But behind the glamour, Amy explains, her father faced heartbreak after heartbreak, struggles that shaped not only his career but also his final years before passing at 89. One of the deepest blows came in 2020, when Robert's son, Jaime, died at the age of 58 from liver cancer. For Redford, this was not just another tragedy. It was the unbearable loss of a son he loved dearly, a man with whom he shared both vision and purpose. Jaime was more than a child to him. He was a partner in storytelling, a fellow filmmaker, and a tireless environmental activist. Together, father and son bonded over a shared belief in the power of art and the urgency of protecting the natural world. Jaime had already survived 2 liver transplants and years of health struggles, but cancer cut his life short, leaving Robert crushed by grief, and Amy mourning a brother whose presence had been a guiding light in her own life. Amy recalls that her father, who valued privacy above all else, chose to retreat into the quiet of his Utah ranch to grieve with his family. Publicist Cindy Berger spoke for the family at the time, describing Jaime as a loving husband, father, and son who touched everyone with his warmth. But Amy insists the true depth of her father's loss could never be measured in public statements. Losing Jaime reopened every scar from his past and reminded him once more of life's cruel fragility. It was not the first time Robert had endured the nightmare of burying a child. Decades earlier, he and Lola Van Wagenen lost their infant son Scott to sudden infant death syndrome at just 10 weeks old. Poorly understood at the time, SIDS left them devastated, grieving in silence and without answers. Though Robert rarely spoke of it, Amy reveals that the pain of Scott's death never left him. It shaped his protectiveness as a father and his quiet commitment to supporting research so that other families might be spared such loss. His fears only deepened years later, when tragedy nearly struck again. Amy recounts how her sister Shauna survived a terrifying accident when her car plunged into the icy Jordan River near Salt Lake City. A passerby's courage saved her, but the incident left Robert shaken, another reminder of how quickly life could slip away. And then came yet another cruel twist of fate. In 1983, Shauna's fiancé, Sid Wells, a journalism student at the University of Colorado, was murdered, shot in the head inside his apartment. The prime suspect, Thane Smyka, was released for lack of evidence and later disappeared. The case remains unsolved to this day. Amy explains that this unresolved crime cast a long shadow over the family, tormenting her father with questions that would never find answers. In his final days, Amy reveals, Robert was not haunted by fame, nor by the pressure of a career that had defined him, but by the memories of the children he had lost, the close calls that could have taken more, and the tragedies that had carved deep lines into his heart. She describes a man who carried grief as silently as he carried greatness, a father who suffered more than the world ever saw, and a legend whose last moments were shaped not by applause, but by the lingering echoes of pain and love intertwined. What emotional burden haunted Robert Redford's final days, and could Amy's confession finally reveal the hidden truth behind his silence? The final weight of friendship and loss. As Amy Redford opened up about her father's last days, she spoke not only of family heartbreak, but also of the friendships that had defined him, sustained him, and in the end, left him with a sense of profound absence. She revealed that while Robert Redford carried the burdens of losing children and enduring personal tragedy, he was also shaped by the deep ties he built with those who walked beside him in Hollywood. Bonds that brought joy, but also new wounds when they were lost. His rise began not on the screen, but on the stage. In the early 1960s, Redford captured attention in the Broadway play Barefoot in the Park, starring alongside Elizabeth Ashley. That success quickly propelled him into film. with his breakout role in Inside Daisy Clover, 1965, where he starred with Natalie Wood. Amy explained that this was not just a professional milestone, but the start of a cherished friendship. Natalie Wood, already a celebrated actress, recognized something in the young Redford, his quiet intensity, his artistic hunger, and helped him find his footing in a world that often swallowed newcomers whole. Their bond endured for years, but it ended in tragedy that Redford never truly overcame. In 1981, Wood drowned under mysterious circumstances while on a boat with her husband, Robert Wagner, and actor Christopher Walken. Her sudden death shook Hollywood, but for Redford, Amy revealed, it was far more personal. He had admired her as an artist but loved her as a genuine friend, someone who showed him kindness in his earliest days. Losing her forced him to confront once again the fragility of life. It was a grief he carried quietly, revisiting it in his private reflections even decades later. Then came another bond, one that reshaped not just his career, but his personal life. On the set of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 1969, Redford met Paul Newman. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, but off-screen. A rare friendship blossomed, one built on mischief, loyalty, and brotherhood. They became infamous for their pranks. Redford once gifted Newman an old dented Porsche for his 50th birthday, only for Newman to have it crushed and returned as a sculpture. But beneath the humor was something deeper. When Redford's marriage to Lola Van Wagenen ended in 1985 after 28 years, it was Newman who stood by him, steady and unwavering. Amy confessed that her father leaned on Newman during some of his darkest moments. Their friendship was not the superficial camaraderie Hollywood often displayed. It was, as Redford himself once said, like having a brother. When Newman died in 2008, Redford was devastated. He described it as losing a part of himself, and Amy recalled how often her father would look back on their laughter with longing. In his final days, Amy said, these losses weighed heavily on him. The absence of Natalie Wood, the silence left by Paul Newman, combined with the tragedies within his own family, left her father reflective, even haunted. To the world, Robert Redford was a legend, a man who seemed to embody resilience and grace. But as Amy revealed, behind the legend was a man who knew too well the cost of love, friendship, and the cruel inevitability of loss. But what heartbreak could truly break a legend? Was it family tragedy, lost friendships, or haunting regrets? Stay glued. Amy Redford's painful confession. As Robert Redford's 90 years drew closer, the signs of time could no longer be disguised. The actor who once embodied energy, youth, and strength, praised endlessly for his athletic build and rugged charm, was slowly becoming a different man. For decades, he had maintained an enviable lifestyle, filled with hiking, skiing, and long days spent under the open skies of his Utah ranch. But the pace of those earlier years came with a price. His body, once seemingly indestructible, began to show its limits. Amy Redford, his daughter, has spoken with striking honesty about those final days, revealing how even her father's endless resilience could not fully hold back the reality of age. The aches that once seemed temporary became constant companions, and the bursts of energy that had carried him through so many roles and adventures dwindled into long stretches of quiet rest. Family members noticed how much more reflective he had become, pausing to think deeply before speaking, no longer driven by the rush of schedules or the demands of Hollywood. Amy described the weight of loss that shaped his final years as deeply as the physical decline. The deaths of close friends, including his dearest companion Paul Newman, left lasting scars. Redford, never one to speak often about grief, carried those memories quietly, but Amy could see the loneliness that shadowed him. She confessed that although her father continued to work on causes close to his heart, especially environmental protection and independent filmmaking, his energy was not the same. Even in moments of triumph, there was a stillness in him, as if the world he once filled with laughter and vitality had grown smaller. Yet Amy also emphasized the strength that defined her father until the end. Though slowed, he never abandoned the things he believed in most. He poured his final efforts into ensuring the Sundance Institute and his environmental work would endure, determined that his legacy would be more than films alone. In her words, there was both sadness and admiration, a recognition that her father, Robert Redford, fought his last battles with quiet dignity, holding onto purpose even as his body gave way. To those who knew him only as Hollywood's eternal leading man, Amy's confession strips away the glamour, exposing something more fragile, more human. It was not the spotlight, nor the applause, but the love of family, the sting of loss, and the fight to leave behind something meaningful that defined Robert Redford's last chapter. But what if Robert Redford's final days held a truth far deeper than fame, one his daughter revealed only now? Don't miss this part. Amy Redford's heartbreaking truth. In the final chapter of Robert Redford's life, the glamour of Hollywood faded into something far more personal, intimate, and deeply human. As he reached the age of 89, the man who had once been defined by his strength, charm, and unshakable presence found himself confronting the weight of loss, regret, and the unrelenting passage of time. His daughter, Amy Redford, has spoken with raw honesty about these last days, revealing the private struggles that shaped her father's end in ways few could have imagined. For the world, Redford was the golden Sundance kid, the fearless journalist of All the President's Men, and the timeless figure who seemed untouched by age. But Amy shared that behind closed doors, her father carried the scars of a lifetime. The death of his mother when he was still young, the devastating health battles of his children, the collapse of his marriage to Lola Van Wagenen after 28 years, and the haunting loss of close friends like Paul Newman, were all wounds that never fully healed. These tragedies, Amy confessed, weighed heavily in his final days. She described him as increasingly reflective, a man who spent more time looking back than forward, quietly reckoning with what his extraordinary journey had cost him. Fame, he often admitted, was a double-edged sword. It brought him wealth and admiration, but it also robbed him of privacy, peace, and sometimes the simplicity of just being a father and a friend. Amy revealed how in the quiet of his Utah ranch, he sought redemption in small moments, time with his grandchildren, long walks in nature, and steady work on the conservation projects he had poured his heart into for decades. Though his health had weakened, Amy said her father faced it all with remarkable courage. The physical decline was visible, yet his spirit remained rooted in purpose. He no longer needed the spotlight. Instead, he found meaning in legacy, protecting the environment, nurturing independent cinema through Sundance, and leaving behind lessons that extended far beyond the screen. To Amy, this was the truth of Robert Redford's final days. Not the Hollywood star, but the father and human being who endured, adapted, and searched for peace. At 89, Robert Redford's story ended not in glittering lights, but in quiet resilience. Through Amy's words, we see not only an icon, but a man who met life's tragedies with grace, and who left this world holding on to love, family, and the causes that defined him. So what do you think? Were Amy Redford's confessions about her father's final days truly revealing about Robert Redford's hidden battles and legacy? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.